Hi, welcome to Corvair Alley. We're in the Corvair Alley shop at the moment, and we're going to be doing a tour here today of my race car, the SUNOCO Corvair as it's popularly known. I got several requests from my YouTube posting on my shop tour here that people would like to see a little bit more of the race car, so that's what we're going to do. So it's either going to bore you to death or it's going to inspire you to build yourself a nice Corvair vintage race car and come out and run with us. So stay tuned, guys. Our tour of the car today, we're going to start at the front, work our way to the back. We'll do a little bit around the outside of the body here. Then we'll open up the lids. We'll get inside, see what's going on there, and take it from there. A little background here on my car. It is a tribute car. It's a Yenko Stinger clone and a tribute car to the Penske-Donahue racing effort from 1967 when they first entered Trans Am racing with a 67 Camaro. That's what I used as a go-by for the way this car looks. Of course, we know how it turned out with the Penske-Donahue organization in Trans Am. They pretty much dominated Trans Am, and it didn't matter what car they drove. But this is the one I like. I like it in particular for the Z28 stripes and the SUNOCO blue and gold colors, or blue and yellow. You cannot beat that combination. Okay, we'll start out here with our little walking tour. Got the front end here. You'll notice that I've taken the parking lights out and made brake ducts. I just took a tracing of the outline there of the bezel, made a little aluminum deal for it, and put some screen in there, and it's worked out pretty good. Of course, we have the Z28 style spoiler on the bottom of it, and you can see the opening there for the remote oil cooler. As you can see, we've got vintage correct decals all the way around. All of the Coney, the Fram, Firestone, Roger Penske Chevrolet, and where it would have said Camaro, it says Corvair on mine, of course. Right now I've got my Goodyear Eagle racing slicks on it. These are American Racing Torque Thrust vintage wheels, which is what they ran back in the day. We move on down the side here. I created a decal, as it were. It's in memory of Mark Donahue for his organization he called Race Mark. The number 36 was the number I picked because that's the number that was on that 67 car. You never see this one anymore in the restorations. You always see the number 6 or the number 9. Of course, we have the D production. Got to carry a few SCCA logos on here because we do SCCA racing. On to the back here, big SUNOCO decal. Their car I don't think had the big SUNOCO decal on it, but mine does. Moving around to the back here, you can see I've eliminated the inboard taillights, put the little aluminum block-off plate on there like a lot of the early Stingers were. On my headers here you can see the super trap stuck on them. That's just to keep the neighbors happy when I'm out here fooling around with it in the driveway. The Yenko California Tag. Thanks to Seth Emerson, who sold that to me. I have a nice tag that is color coordinated and has all the proper logo on it. Now this rear lid is fiberglass. A little reflection going on there, but this is fiberglass. It was a street lid. I cut the innards out of it to lighten it up. That's why it looks a little floppy there when the hood pins are not in. Come around here to the other side, the driver's side. Now you'll notice I have these up on some little blocks of wood. These are actually my little risers I had made up, and I have some turn plates. They're just a couple of pieces of steel put together with some grease in between. Makes nice little turn plates when you're jacking a car up and down, playing with suspension and all that sort of thing. We come on around here to the side. Now you can see here I have reproduction Yenko sail panels on here. These were made out of steel. I inset them a little bit instead of making them flush with the body. That was just the way I wanted to do it. We come up here. What appears to be a glass is actually a plastic windshield. We have the proper safety straps on it. All right, looking around the side here, I've got these quarter windows that are made out of Lexan. As you can see, I bent a nice little angle on them, kind of deflect the air, what have you. And I put the other plexiglass windows in the doors here when I'm towing the car. That keeps the weather out and what have you. So come on around here. Now I have some pinstripings. Penske's cars always had tasteful pinstriping. I have an old high school buddy, Milt Wheeler, who does pinstriping, finally got a piece of equipment that I wanted him to pinstripe. Look up here at the front cover is actually as carbon fiber. You can see a little bit of a waffle pattern in there. I left that in. The body man wanted to know if he wanted me to take that out, or if I wanted him to take that out, and I said, nope, leave it in there. I like it that way. Very lightweight, very stiff, much lighter than fiberglass. We get down here. See, I got my stage 2 Yenko sticker on there. We have the toe loop here, which you've got to have at least a 2-inch ring there for the toe. And then for the headlights here, I just had a friend of mine make up some nice little aluminum plates that have a shape of the headlight, and it's got a flat aluminum plate behind that. So that works out pretty well. You notice the Dante's down the hatch windshield banner here. That was from this year's MIDI. It was a throwback to Dante's down the hatch bar in Atlanta, Georgia, that sponsored James Reeves' race car. Since James came out and ran with us this year, came out of retirement as it were, he came up with the idea that we'd do this, and everybody wore these banners on the car, and it worked out nice. Looks real good. Now, to hold all these lids on, I've got the traditional hood pins. They're 1/2-inch aluminum hood pins, and I learned a lesson. You got to put lanyards on these little boogers because they will disappear like nothing you've ever seen. Again, we have all the proper safety devices in place here to keep the windshield in. The windshield is glass, it is not plastic. As I said, this lid is very lightweight. You never want to lay it on the top like I did one time. It took off like a kite. And I take it over here and put it in my lid stand, which I made a good while back. I take this to the races with me, so I got somewhere to put the lids out of the way, somebody doesn't step on them, that sort of thing. So, all right, this is the front of the car. Used to be the trunk area. And there it is. What we have up front here, obviously, the fuel cell. That's what you see, the big red square thing there. Then up here, I've repositioned my fire protection equipment. I have it sitting up here. And we have the new Wilwood master cylinder. We have the circuit breaker box here. And on the fuel cell, I've got dual Holly red pumps. These things put out about 7 psi max. They're self-regulated, so you don't need anything special for it. We look around here, you can see my Dynabat, very small, about 13-pound battery, and the remote oil cooler with the lines coming out the top. This is all made so I can take it apart, pull the cooler out, drain it, do whatever I need to do. Also in here, we can see some brake ducting. This, of course, is where my parking lights were, and I've got the ducting strung out here. We come over here, we go right in the hole there and go out to the disc brakes, the wheels. Also, you'll notice all my brake plumbing is up inside of the trunk here and not somewhere underneath like stock. I like using AN fittings everywhere I can because typical with a car like this, it's being taken apart and put back together frequently, so AN fittings are made for that very reason. Now you notice I still have windshield wipers. I don't have the wiper on the car right now. I'm debating on whether or not to do away with those or not. They say real race cars don't have wipers. Well, I don't know about that. You know, the glass treatments only go so far. This is the relay here for the electric fuel pumps. And you can see my main battery wire coming out of the firewall there. A little bit more here on my fire system. This is a water system. It's not pressurized. This is water and a foaming agent inside this tank. What we have over here is a rather large CO2 cartridge that gives it its power. When you yank on the handle inside there, it punctures that cartridge, pressurizes the fire bottle, and then we have a series of nozzles, and that's what that little thing sticking up there is. These put out a fan spray pattern. There's one here, there's one facing me in the driver's compartment, and two back in the engine compartment. There's a little detail here of the hood pin, what I use to space it up with. It's actually a piece of hose on there, and then these rubber grommets are actually Corvair dipstick grommets from the engine sheet metal. Works out pretty well. Just shove that sucker right on there. Gives a nice little spacer. As I said, not a whole lot you'd find in here on your daddy's Corvair. Got the basic engine, charging system, 4 carburetors, 140 horse type engine. Although it's making more than 140 horsepower, I'm not really sure how much it's making. Of course, the motor has hoses replacing all of the steel lines, which you have to do if you're going to race, because the vibration will break them. We have a remote oil filter over here in the corner. It's a Canton unit. We have the connections down here where the original oil cooler would have been. They're AN fittings, of course. And the lines just follow a natural little path over here to the filter. Now you notice a T in the line right here. That comes from my AccuSump that's setting up beside my chair. That's for the extra oil for startup. And in case you lose your oil pressure, you got a little bit there so you can shut her down before you destroy the engine. On up here, this is a thermostat. It's a Mocal thermostat. That keeps the oil circulating to the engine until the engine warms up at about 140 degrees. This thing opens up and lets all of the oil go up through the oil cooler, of course, which goes out through the firewall here. We are using the underground manufactured spring-loaded idler pulley. This thing has worked flawlessly for me. You notice right next to it there I have a rather unique plug for my oil filler. That's actually a plug it's from the hardware store. It's plugged for sewer line. Got an expanding rubber deal on the end of it. Brother, that sucker don't come out. Critical area here on a race car. This is where normally your oil pressure snap switch would go in here, but you can't have things on there that'll vibrate when it's racing or it will break. So we've run a piece of brake line, which is mounted fairly solidly over here, and it connects onto a piece of grease gun hose replacement. This stuff will stand all kinds of pressure. We come on around here, and I've made myself a nice little manifold to hold these 2 pressure senders. The big one is electric for the dash gauge. The small one is a snap switch set at 20 psi for my light on the dash. If it goes below 20 pounds, big light comes on, says I got a problem. Also on the end here you can see I have the oil line connected here to the mechanical gauge. I have mechanical gauge for my oil pressure back here, and a mechanical gauge here for the fuel pressure to make sure I'm getting something out of the fuel pumps. Now a lot of folks see this on the firewall and ask what it is. Well, it's a pressure switch is what it is. It's actually for like a clothes dryer. This thing is attached via a tube right there to a bolt that is drilled out. This thing works on pressure. When the fan's running and creates cooling air, it also makes enough pressure, the way that thing is set, that this switch right over here will stay in the open position. But as soon as that thing quits, as if, say, your fan belt came off, that switch closes and turns on a red light on my dash again, telling me that the fan belt's off. Most all racing organizations require some kind of a puke tank or catch can. This is the one for the left side. This is off the crankcase ventilation. I created another crankcase vent down here that looks pretty much like the stock one, which of course is over here, and its catch can is over here underneath the right fender. Definitely got to talk a little bit here about this nice new Heim jointed ball bearing linkage. This was created by Roger Parent out in California. It is without a doubt, at least in my opinion, one of the best things anyone's ever done for the Corvair. This makes your linkage really all adjustable, very smooth, and pretty much stays where you put it when you take it off and then reattach it. It's got these nice little adjustable Heim joints connecting it to the carburetor bell crank. Another nice little Heim joint there, and then there is a Heim bearing inside that. This is on the secondary linkage here. This stuff works flawlessly. There's another little device. It's a remote starter switch underneath the left fender here, I like to start the engine back here so I can see what's going on, check all the gauges, make sure everything is as it should be. Something you'll notice here underneath the carburetor is an aluminum riser with a very large AN fitting connected to it. This is kind of a vacuum equalizer. There's two of these. They go around through here. These connect the two rear carburetors, and then there's a separate one back here that connects the two front carburetors. I can't say whether they do any good or not, but several people are running them, and we have one Corvair racer who claims dyno-proven results. So, hey, it couldn't hurt the way I look at it. I was talking about nozzles for the fire protection deal. This is one of the two that's back here in the engine compartment. I had one on the left and one on the right here, and they are aimed, since this has a very distinctive downward fan pattern. Okay, now that we've looked at the front end and we've looked at the engine compartment a little bit, let's open up the door here and see what it looks like in the office. Okay, one of the things you'll notice here on the door, of course, they are gutted. They're still steel doors. They're not plastic. They are gutted, though. You see my door opening mechanism there, which is basically a steel cable running over here to the latch. Also, you might like to notice my fancy little doings here. Make my little concave lightning holes. I have more for decoration than anything else, but I actually did take out a few pounds of metal. Kind of hard to get this. It's all black in there, of course, but that's what they look like. That was a neat little device I bought. Saw it in Hot Rod Magazine. Said, hey, that looks like a cool tool to add to my collection. Makes really nice looking holes, aircraft looking stuff. All right, one of the major safety factors or safety devices you got to have in a race car, of course, is a roll cage. My roll cage was built by Dave Clemens over there in Roanoke, Virginia. Dave's done a lot of these. It's done to SCCA specs. Dave does a good job. He knows what he's doing with this stuff, and he knows my penchant for details. So he did a real good job for me, and if you're planning on building you a Corvair race car and you can get to David's place, I highly recommend him. We have the common X bar on this side, and it doesn't extend into the door because there was no reason for it. Also, although you can't quite see it in here, I have some plastic protective tape on top of here because we're always loading stuff in and out, or somebody's climbing in and out of it. First thing you notice laying here on the floor is my AccuSump. This is kind of the extra oil supply under pressure. It has a valve on the back of it here, which is remotely controlled by that cable you see attached to it. The driver's chair is an Ultra Shield road racing piece with the accompanying upholstery, padding, or whatever. I've added a little bit of padding to it here and there. As you learn when you race a little bit, you find out where the pinch points are, and you got to change that. Looking here in the back now, you can see the crossover bars and the braces and what have you for the roll hoop itself. We have very substantial 5/16 plate in the bottom of the roll hoop here. This partially is mandated by SCCA, but also on a Corvair, you have a seam in the sheet metal right here, and some Corvair racers have discovered the hard way that if you wreck the right way, it splits right there. So that plate covers that seam. Same with your rear bars here. You got to have a nice reinforcing plate on them, and that's a pretty strong area right there over the wheel tub on the rear. You can also see here on the rear quarter window area here, I've carried out my little theme of lightning holes, as it were. You see, I've got the panoramic rear view mirror here on the inside. I use a couple of mirrors. The other one over here is the stock car type little round mirror that's attached to my roll cage on the other side. That one right there works pretty well too. You got to have the safety mandated cutoff switch, and this switch also has to be wired so that when the engine is running and you turn this switch off, the engine stops. If you don't have the proper wiring, the engine will continue to run by backfeeding. Okay, looking at the dash here, I pulled the safety pin out of that. That's the fire handle right there. You pull that, that activates the fire bottle. Hopefully I never have to do that. Got the ignition panel, fuel pump switches, and then the black T handle over there is for the AccuSump, and also beside of it you can see a little bit of my spray nozzle that's aimed at me. We also make use of the heim joint here for the steering shaft. A couple of limiters on there. The roll bar padding is safety specified also. This is the best stuff here. This is not that real soft foam. This is the harder foam. Steering wheel is a hollow aluminum piece, exceedingly light as a matter of fact. Pretty neat piece. That's a stock car piece. Dash mounted tachometer. I don't have a shift light on it though. What I do have in place of a shift light, however, I have a rev limiter here on my MSD spark box. It's got little dials inside there. I can crawl back in there with a screwdriver and adjust whatever rev limit I feel safe doing. I ran my aluminum tubing here for the fire system down through the little channel here underneath the door sill where the door sill plates would go. Just runs along the back and goes through the firewall there with the bulkhead fitting. Another of the rules here says you've got to have some markers on the outside of your car to tell the emergency crew where the electric cutoff is and where the fire handle is. Okay, driver's door, same thing as a passenger door. Got the cute little holes. It's all hogged out inside. It's all steel, and it has the little lanyard there to activate the latch. You can see my stock car mirror here. Sticks out there just far enough. Now, a lot of this is something you're going to have when you're wearing a Hans device, because you can't move your head around very much with those things. It's another good shot of the steering wheel. Also, for some instrumentation, I have my aircraft style cylinder head temperature gauge sitting in that little auxiliary panel. That's definitely something you want to keep track of, especially if you're running hard on a hot day. There's the main instrument panel. We've got the usual stuff on there for oil, fuel, electric, and then I got my two warning lights there, the red one and the yellow one. Those are LEDs. You can see them when they come on. On my pedals here, I put a couple of these little aluminum replacement pedal things over the steel pedals, and also have that larger one up on the toe portion of the accelerator pedal there to do the old heel and toe deal. I use the large 4-speed shift ball, and we do have the common Corvair quick shift setup here. Now you'll notice on this side here that the door bars stick out a lot further than they do on the other side. In fact, they stick inside the door here. That does two things. It affords the driver a bit more protection, and also if somebody happens to hit you in the door, it doesn't cave your door in quite as far, but it's going to cave it in. My safety harness is a Willens. It's a Willens. It's an FIA harness. It was good for 6 years as far as the certification goes. This thing is really nice. It has the central buckle. As I said, it has a central toggle deal here. You can throw that lever right there and it disconnects all of your belts for quick egress. And we have the proper looping back here along the bar, and with the H brackets there to lock them in place. This is on my roll bar hoop. The hole there is so that the inspectors can check and see if you have the correct wall thickness in your pipe. And the number is my number on my log book and stamped onto the roll bar here, or the roll hoop. Another of the safety devices that you have to have is a window net. This one is a G-force, and it's the mesh style. I like the mesh style better than the web style because you can see out of it a lot easier. All I did to mount it down here at the bottom, I used a cheap seat belt kit actually, plenty strong enough for the straps on the bottom. There's an aluminum piece that goes inside here, and I pop riveted the thing on to stiffen up the bottom part. The rear part there just slips into a little bracket with a hole in it. The front part of the bar here is spring loaded so that I can release it easily. All I have to do is reach up here with this, push it forward, and the bar comes out.
One of the things I'm proud of here is this signature. It's James Reeve Jr. He signed this a couple of years ago. He drove my Corvair in track event down at Roebling Road.
By his own admission, that's the first time he'd been in a Corvair for a very, very long time. I feel proud that I may have helped fan the flames of the old competition spirit and got him back out here in a race car, and he's been running vintage events with us. Okay, folks, that's the tour of the SUNOCO Corvair here at Corvair Alley. We didn't get into any of the details, particularly on the suspension or what's underneath the car. That's a little more than I want to get into right now. That might be for another time, or if I finally get around to updating my website, you can probably check there for all those ugly details. See ya.